If you asked me 3 years ago what my least favorite class in Pathfinder 2nd Edition was, I'd tell you it was the Oracle, because I really didn't like that class and I still don't. But if you asked me what my second least favorite class was, it would be the Investigator. When this class first came out, I was not a big fan of it, between weird feat options and an overall just vibe of a character I didn't dig that I couldn't already get out of, like, a rogue. But over the last 3 years, especially since the remaster gave it a little bit of an upgrade, the Investigator has been growing on me as a class. Now, it's nowhere near my top 5 or even my top 10, but it's probably in my top 20 out of 25. So when I sat down and went through all the Investigator feats to make a list of my top 5 favorites, I was impressed. Not just by the base class out of the research I did for yesterday's video, but they've got some really cool feat options, and I'd like to show off 5 of them here today, but not before getting through a dishonorable mention of that's odd because I hate this feat, and I think it's really funny how much I hate this feat, because there's always people in the comments who defend this feat, and I understand why you like it, but as a GM, I really can't stand it. Okay, I'm over-exaggerating. It's not that bad of a feat, it's just annoying, I guess, from a gameplay perspective, to have an ability that says anytime you enter a scene, you have to ask the GM, hey, is there anything weird? Anything at all. If it's out of the ordinary, I do notice it. And I just don't like that. It's weird to put that kind of agency in a player's hands via a game mechanic. It's fine if the GM has you enter and says, oh, the Investigator has an insane passive perception DC. Of course they notice the blood-stained ripped curtain. But to have a feat that just says, hey, do I see anything? It's going to slow things down constantly, and it's going to have one of two endings to me. It's the GM is going to have to either say, no, there's nothing here, every time they enter a room, or they're going to have to make something up entirely, or the third and worst option, in my opinion, is them going, yeah, the curtain's ripped and stained with blood. I was going to have people roll perception for it, but I guess you just see it automatically, and that's not fun. I'm not going to rant anymore because people have been listening to me hate on this feat for literally 4 years now, and I'm not going to stop anytime soon. Welcome to my top 5 feats for the Investigator. Throw the patrons on screen. Thanks for your money. If you'd like to also give me your money, there's a link in the description. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Starting off with my 5th least favorite tip, Exploit Blunder. Right at level 2, this is such a cool defensive option, unlike a lot of things I've ever seen before. As a reaction, if a creature would ever miss or critically miss you with an attack, you can step. Simple as that. If you are right within either just someone's melee reach or at the edge of a larger creature's reach, and they miss you even once, cool. I'm not in range anymore. If you want to attack me, you'd have to spend another action approaching me and then attacking again. Now, it does need to specifically be the creature you devised a stratagem against, which if you're in like a big 4v1 boss fight, that's going to be incredibly useful for getting you out of a sticky situation. I just love the uniqueness. You know, so many other classes get like a nimble dodge clone of, as a reaction, +2 armor class, but this is so unique. You know, they have to miss you first, so if they roll really low on their first attack, you might get the opportunity to waste so many of their actions having them to either chase you or give up on you entirely. A step action is so strong, and I say this 100,000 times a year, as a class with no built-in reactions, giving yourself a reaction like this is incredible. It also doesn't say you have to step away from the target. If you're being flanked and this guy misses you with his attack, cool, you can just step either around the other enemy or to the side of the other enemy, or even just step closer to him so that he's not flanking you anymore. There's a lot of cool ways to use Exploit Blunder, and I just love things that let characters do stuff when an enemy fails, because in Pathfinder 2e, enemies miss a lot because they attack a lot. So this kind of feat, very useful. Almost every encounter it's going to be usable, and getting it right at level 2, how do you write a better feat than that? Well, I'll tell you how. There's 4 better ones. My 4th favorite feat does something that you know I'm a big fan of, and that's bending the rules and changing how certain abilities can be used. Detective's Readiness allows your investigation bonus from Pursue a Lead to be applied to saving throws against creatures and effects related to your mystery. If you're trying to discover the identity of the head of the Thieves Guild and you spring a trap inside the Thieves Guild, you get your bonus to that saving throw. Or if you're fighting against their cronies, you get to add that bonus to any saving throws, to any effects they might be doing to you because they're related to your investigation. Even better than that, as a reaction, I guess I shouldn't have said that investigators have no reactions, because they do have Clue In, but as a reaction, you can give an ally that same bonus. If one of these Thieves Guild members throws out a fireball at your ally, you can clue them in to give them your investigation bonus to their saving throw, which, reminder, I believe at level 7 it increases to a +2? Level 9, and again, cluing can only be used once per 10 minutes, but that's still so cool that you just passively get a +1 and then inevitably +2 to all saving throws against anything that's related to your investigation, which if you're investigating the main plot point of the campaign, is probably going to be a good majority of things that aren't random or unrelated encounters. If you read this feat as +1 to all saving throws at level 4, that's ridiculous. Upgraded to +2 at level 9 automatically? It's simple, but its number go up. Its defensive number go up, which isn't quite as exciting, but it's still really fun. Also, to clarify a line here, because it confused me for a little bit as well, it says you gain your investigation bonus to saving throws and their DCs. What that basically means is that if an opponent ever uses an ability that targets a DC, the most obvious example being Demoralize, which is against your will DC, your own DC goes up by that amount. You get that +1, or at higher levels +2 to your will DC if a creature related to your investigation tried to demoralize you, or use any ability that targets a saving throw DC instead of calling for your own save. And you know what, while we're on the subject of cool defensive abilities, because the Investigator is a weirdly defensive class with a lot of its feat selections, in fact all 3 of these top 5 feats have been defensive so far, that wasn't planned, Foresee Danger at level 12. As a reaction, once again, you know I love reactions, as a reaction, if a creature targets you with an attack and you can see it coming, you can choose to have them target your Perception DC instead of your armor class. And this is even more broken than it sounds. As an investigator, obviously your Perception is going to be one of your highest proficiencies. How high does it get by level 12? At level 12, your Perception is already Master, and next level, level 13, it becomes Legendary, compared to your currently Expert armor proficiency. Now at first glance the math might not seem too impactful. If you've got 4 dexterity and +2 leather armor, you're looking at about 34 armor class compared to a legendary proficiency Perception DC of 35. Now a reaction to give +1 armor class doesn't sound that great, but where this is incredible is that because they are targeting your Perception DC, anything that reduces armor class does not apply because they are not attacking your armor class. If you are clumsy and off guard for like -3 AC, if you use Foresee Danger, it switches to your Perception DC, which isn't affected by either of those penalties. Off guard and clumsy specifically reduce your armor class, and your Perception DC is not functioning as your armor class. So in the right situations, when you are being bogged down by armor class penalties, this reaction gives you so much more than just +1 or +2. And if you have a shoddy dexterity score but a decent wisdom, then this is going to be even better for you. It's just going to take a lot of forethought, and obviously you wouldn't want to play through necessarily 12 levels of Investigator with a dog dexterity score just to get access to this. But if you're playing a high level campaign that might start at like level 11, you can consider dumping dexterity and playing an interesting like wisdom-based investigator using Foresee Danger. And you just know I love bending the rules. Saying, hey, you attack this skill's DC is so freaking cool. And remember, you can get item bonuses to Perception as well. If you have a Greater Obsidian Goggles equipped, that +2 to Perception checks involving sight, at least the way I read it and understand it, would apply to this DC, as your DC is made of your skill check modifier +10. And I would say Foreseeing Danger involves sight. So that right there, +2 item bonus to make up for the armor potency runes that don't apply to your Perception DC. Love this feat. My second favorite feat for this class is just so satisfying to use, because as long as you hit a creature doing something you're going to be doing anyway, you just get more out of it. Level 4's Strategic Assessment. The first time you hit any given creature that you have devised a stratagem against, you immediately gain one of the following pieces of information: their highest weakness, their highest resistance, their lowest saving throw, or one immunity. The GM picks one of those 4 pieces of information to give, either deliberately choosing one of the 4 or just rolling a 1d4 and giving them the appropriate information. But the cool part is, if the investigator would receive nothing, and like they randomly choose immunity and the creature has no immunities, the GM picks something else. The answer to the strategic assessment will never be nothing. And that's awesome. The fact that there's no skill check involved. You devise a stratagem, you hit them, you get that information. Obviously, the saving throw is going to be the most useful. I think that would be the best one to rely on, because I think that just is a very good feeling feat for the investigator to hit an enemy, learn their saving throw, and then relay to the wizard, hey, hit him with a reflex save. I think that's awesome. And there's just so many nice things. There's no caveats to this, you know? If you miss with your first attack on a devised stratagem, cool, you can try again next turn. It's only immune once you have successfully hit them. There's no saving throw from them. There's no skill check from you. It's just if you hit them, you get information, and that's rad. And now, if you know me, you know my number 1 feat should meet all my criteria, you know? They're really fun, they're really strong, they're universally applicable, they're not locked behind any subclasses, but half the time I ignore half of these and just go with the feat that I think is the coolest. And that's the exact case going on right here. It's simple, it's not that crazy, but my favorite investigator feat, level 12's just as planned. It's simple. As a free action, once per hour when you devise a stratagem, you roll twice and take the higher result. In Pathfinder 2e, there are not a lot of ways to give yourself advantage, especially outside of certain ancestries like catfolk and halflings. But to be able to do this with your best ability every hour, that's crazy, especially because one of the biggest weaknesses of the investigator is getting a low roll on devise a stratagem. You roll low there, you have to pivot your entire turn, but once per encounter, when it really counts, being able to roll twice, take the highest, and go with that, that's gonna be that's like guaranteeing you're gonna do something useful on your turn. Just statistically, the odds of you rolling like below 10 twice is so low unless you're me. Twice as many chances to roll a hit, twice as many chances to roll a critical hit, and because you always take the higher result, that inevitable like 2 or 3 on the die will hopefully be replaced at least by a 13 or a 14, making your turn usable, ensuring your strategic strike goes off, dealing all that chunky bonus damage. I love it. Maybe it's because I have some of the worst dice luck I've ever seen in the world, and the ability to just say, no, I'm rolling twice and picking the one I want to use today is just really nice. And the fact that it's once per hour, if this was once per day, I wouldn't be batting an eye. This would be garbage if it's once per day. But the fact that it's once per hour, and unless you're in the middle of a deep dungeon crawl, you're probably only having about 1 encounter per hour or more each day. I think this is a fantastic feat and just a feel-good feat. At the end of the day, that's what matters to me. Does the feat feel good to use? And as long as I don't roll 2 3s on 2d20, well, let me tell you, that'll always feel good to use. I rolled an 11 and a 12. But those are my top 5 investigator feats. What do you think? Are there others in there that could be on this list? I'll tell you the answer. Yes, absolutely there are. There are so many cool investigator feats, and if you haven't read them just because you don't vibe with the investigator class, I highly recommend you pop open and God, I can't get through this. Pop open Player Core 2 and take a look at them just because they're some of the most uniquely designed feats for a martial class, and that's saying something. I always expected the investigator feats, even when I remember reading them way back in the original Advanced Player's Guide, I always thought, okay, this is Rogue 2. It's also just kind of like a swashbuckly rogue character, but maybe they added some in the remaster that I haven't compared and contrasted from the original feat list, but I think they're all fantastic. Except for that's on. If you pick that feat, I'm going to come to your